Aaliyah was a woman of extraordinary beauty and talent, adored by millions across the globe. Yet behind the glittering facade of fame lay a complex web of control, secrecy, and betrayal, perhaps even something far more sinister. From unsettling coincidences to esoteric symbolism and powerful industry connections, many have long questioned whether her untimely death was truly accidental or the result of a meticulously orchestrated sacrifice. In this video, we'll delve into what that truly signifies, from alleged industry blood sacrifices and occult symbolism to the hidden spiritual warfare operating behind the scenes. Many believe Aaliyah's death bore the hallmarks of a calculated industry sacrifice, a transaction for power, wealth, or enforced silence. At the time of her passing, she appeared to be breaking away. A new relationship, fresh contracts, and growing creative autonomy. To those in control, such independence may have rendered her a liability. Let me be clear, this is not about fueling fear or indulging in idle speculation. This is about uncovering deeper spiritual truths, because in these final days, spiritual blindness is a risk we simply cannot afford. To grasp why some believe Aaliyah's death was a sacrifice, we must first examine the alleged inner workings of the entertainment industry. Numerous researchers and whistleblowers contend that in Hollywood, there are only a few paths to success, and most come at an unimaginable cost. No one rises in the entertainment industry without paying a price. You're either born into it, often comes through lineage, what we now call nepotism, like Angelina Jolie, Jaden Smith, Miley Cyrus, or Zoe Kravitz, and many, many others, or sold into it through parents willing to make unimaginable compromises. Consider child stars from the Mickey Mouse Club, like Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, and Christina Aguilera, or early talents discovered on shows such as Star Search, who were later groomed for fame. In more recent years, platforms like YouTube have produced stars like Justin Bieber. Behind the scenes, these individuals are often controlled by handlers, locked into restrictive contracts, and bound by lifelong non-disclosure agreements. Aaliyah's ascent began at a remarkably young age. At just 10 years old, she appeared on Star Search, and by 15, she was married to R. Kelly, a figure widely recognized for his abusive and manipulative behavior. Her career was overseen by her uncle, Barry Hankerson, a powerful industry insider with extensive connections. It was Hankerson who introduced Aaliyah to R. Kelly when she was only 12, effectively placing her within the sphere of one of the most infamous personalities in the music business. From this perspective, Hankerson may be seen as an industry gatekeeper, facilitating access while also exerting control over her trajectory. There are persistent allegations that Aaliyah's parents may have knowingly relinquished her to the industry for grooming. Some theorists suggest she was subjected to MK Ultra programming, a covert psychological conditioning method purportedly used to manipulate stars through trauma, pharmacological intervention, and dissociation. R. Kelly is alleged to have served as her initial handler, initiating a relationship that culminated in an illegal marriage. When Aaliyah was just 15, a dynamic widely interpreted as grooming and exploitation. Within the framework of MK Ultra theory, handlers inflict trauma to fracture the subject's psyche, creating dissociative identities that render them more controllable and programmable. Aaliyah's withdrawn, soft-spoken public demeanor, coupled with her enigmatic lyrics and elusive presence, correspond with the traits often attributed to a programmed starlet. This alignment is unlikely to be coincidental. Although R. Kelly was her handler, it is alleged that multiple individuals were involved in her programming. MK Ultra was an actual CIA mind control program that operated from 1953 to 1973, its existence exposed during U.S. Senate hearings in 1975. The project involved unethical experiments utilizing drugs, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and psychological trauma to manipulate subjects, frequently without their consent. Today, the term MK Ultra is often invoked in discussions about the entertainment industry, referring to the belief that similar trauma-based conditioning techniques are employed on celebrities from an early age to create compliant performers, sometimes molded into hypersexualized personas often referred to as sex kittens. If you haven't already, be sure to check out my video, The Sacrifice of Marilyn Monroe, which explores her role as what many believe to be the first publicly famous figure under MK Ultra, Monarch, and presidential model programming. It's a deep dive that sheds light on the inner workings of Hollywood. Here's an excerpt from that video. Marilyn Monroe remains one of the most iconic women in American history, a symbol of beauty, sensuality, and timeless glamour. But behind her flawless image and unforgettable smile may have been a much more disturbing reality. What if Marilyn wasn't just a beloved actress and sex symbol, but also a carefully controlled figure, possibly even a sacrifice within the dark machine of Hollywood? While the world adored her, Some believe Marilyn's life behind the scenes was marked by manipulation, isolation, and psychological torment. It's been alleged that she was not only surrounded by powerful handlers, but also subjected to intense control, possibly linked to the controversial Monarch mind control theory, said to be a branch of the CIA's MK-Ultra program. The Monarch program is believed to be a covert CIA mind control operation, said to be an offshoot of Project MK-Ultra, a real government program that experimented with behavior modification, hypnosis, trauma-based conditioning, and hallucinogens like LSD during the Cold War era. While MK-Ultra was publicly exposed in the 1970s, the Monarch program remains unacknowledged and is considered by many to be a black-budget project that continued underground. It is often associated with Monarch mind control, or Monarch programming, and widely believed to involve severe trauma to create dissociation, the formation of alters, fragmented personalities or alternate identities, the use of triggers, symbols, and commands to activate those personalities, deep psychological control over individuals, especially those in entertainment, politics, or elite families. When most people hear the phrase mind control, they assume it's fiction or internet folklore. But MK-Ultra was real, and it's been declassified. In the 1970s, the CIA publicly admitted to running secret experiments on US and Canadian citizens without their consent. These experiments included the use of LSD, hypnosis, isolation, and sensory deprivation, all aimed at exploring ways to manipulate the human mind. Today, you can go to CIA website and find actual documents confirming this. Here, I'm showing you some of those screenshots, so you can see for yourself that this isn't conspiracy, it's history. Many researchers and survivors believe the MK-Ultra program didn't end, it simply went deeper underground. One of the most talked about alleged continuations is something often called Monarch programming. Unlike MK-Ultra, there are no officially declassified documents confirming Monarch exists. Instead, it shows up in personal testimonies, independent investigations, and patterns that seem to repeat across stories of trauma, dissociation, and control, particularly in certain entertainment and elite circles. So while MK-Ultra is confirmed and documented, Monarch remains unacknowledged, officially at least, but that hasn't stopped survivors from speaking out. Keep in mind, MK-Ultra was once dismissed as a conspiracy theory too, until declassified CIA documents confirmed its existence. The name Monarch is symbolic. It refers to the monarch butterfly, which undergoes radical transformation from caterpillar to butterfly, a metaphor for the metamorphosis of the victim through trauma into someone controllable, programmable, and obedient. Many theorists believe Hollywood has long been used as a breeding ground for Monarch programming, producing celebrities who serve as puppets for powerful institutions. These public figures are often highly sexualized from a young age, surrounded by handlers, agents, managers, producers, displaying signs of breakdowns, dissociation, or glitches, repeatedly placed in roles or settings involving symbolism, mirrors, butterflies, cages, masks, etc. According to these theories, Monroe was molded through trauma, conditioned into becoming the ultimate symbol of desire, and allegedly used as a presidential model, a term used to describe women exploited to serve influential men in elite circles, including high-level political figures like JFK. If this is true, her beauty and charm weren't just natural gifts, they were tools used by others for hidden agendas. As Monroe began to show signs of emotional and psychological breakdown, some theorists suggest that her programming began to unravel, and when a high-profile figure like Marilyn becomes unstable, they may be seen as a liability. In this context, some claim she was ultimately sacrificed, a tragic end to a woman who, in the eyes of many, knew too much and had become too difficult to control. In the framework of mind control theory, celebrities are viewed not merely as performers, but as programmed assets. One subset of this concept is known as monarch programming, a system in which individuals are subjected to severe trauma, pharmacological manipulation, and psychological conditioning to fragment the mind. The intended outcome, as discussed in my Marilyn Monroe video, is the creation of alternate, controllable personas, engineered to serve the interests of powerful elites. Within monarch programming symbolism, butterflies represent transformation through trauma, while big cats, particularly kittens, are associated with sexual conditioning, often termed beta, or sex kitten programming. Aaliyah's cultivated image, part tomboy, part seductress, closely mirrors this archetype. Her breathy vocals, reserved demeanor in interviews, and air of mystery may not have been mere artistic decisions, but rather indicative of dissociation. Even her visual presentation aligned with the template, sleek sunglasses, metallic fabrics, subdued movements, a low hypnotic voice, and lyrics layered with coded undertones. She often posed with one eye obscured, an unmistakable nod to the all-seeing eye symbolism, an undeniable mark of the programming used across many celebrities, these elements appear less like coincidences and more like components of a deliberate construct. Theorists contend that this early trauma may have been instrumental in what is described as breaking the mind. Within this theory, abuse is not incidental but intentional, designed to fracture the psyche and produce dissociative identities that can be conditioned and controlled. As mentioned earlier, many believe Aaliyah's parents knowingly allowed her entry into the system. Her uncle, Barry Hankerson, a powerful industry figure, owned Blackground Records and managed R. Kelly. The marriage between Aaliyah and R. Kelly was not simply ignored, it was actively facilitated. This is not speculation, it is a matter of public record. Yet no legal action was ever taken against R. Kelly, or those involved in orchestrating the union, a fact that many interpret as further evidence of parental awareness and complicity. Aaliyah and R. Kelly's relationship wasn't just inappropriate, it was strategic. Many believe R. Kelly was a pawn, used to initiate Aaliyah into a system of control. At 15, Aaliyah was illegally married to him. Her debut album was literally titled Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, a chilling phrase when you consider her real-life grooming. The album was written and produced entirely by R. Kelly. It's a blueprint for trauma bonding. Aaliyah's shy demeanor, whispers, and dual persona, the tomboy versus the seductress, may reflect internal fragmentation. Some believe her later collaborators helped deprogram her, and that she was attempting to break free before her death. During the early stages of her career, Aaliyah's image was meticulously curated. Her public persona, media interactions, and even her vocal style were tightly controlled. One notable detail was her frequent use of sunglasses, which theorists interpret as a symbolic element within trauma-based mind control, a means of concealing the eyes, often referred to as the windows to the soul, and suggesting a fractured or obscured identity. Aaliyah was not the first, and she will not be the last. Marilyn Monroe is often regarded as Hollywood's original sex kitten. Born Norma Jean, her entire persona was meticulously constructed for elite consumption. When she began resisting control, allegedly threatening to expose government secrets and demanding her freedom, she was found dead, naked, and surrounded by pills, her death still officially ruled as suicide. Britney Spears followed a similar trajectory. Another product of the Mickey Mouse Club, she was hypersexualized as a teenager, suffered a very public breakdown, and ultimately endured a 13-year conservatorship. When Britney shaved her head, she explained she was tired of being touched, watched, and controlled. That was not a meltdown, it was an act of rebellion. Selena Quintanilla's story appears to follow this same blueprint. Reports suggest she began regaining memories of past abuse, an expected psychological response within the framework of MK Ultra and Monarch programming. She sought distance from her family, dreamed of building a fashion empire, and even considered retiring to Mexico to escape her alleged handlers, her father and her husband. But before she could sever those ties, her life was cut short. These women were not merely artists, they were prototypes. Their suffering appears systemic, part of a calculated pattern. When one is broken or attempts to break free, she is replaced. After Aaliyah's untimely death, another singer ascended to her place. In this industry, the throne is never left vacant. When one soul is sacrificed, another is prepared to take its place. After breaking ties with R. Kelly, those close to Aaliyah noted profound changes in her demeanor. She appeared deeply affected by the relationship and consistently refused to speak about it under any circumstances. Friends and collaborators described her as guarded and evasive whenever the subject arose, a behavior that some theorists interpret as indicative of deep psychological conditioning. Within the context of mind control theories, this reluctance is viewed as a hallmark of trauma-based programming, where victims are trained, through fear, coercion, or dissociation, to avoid certain topics entirely. The 2019 documentary Surviving R. Kelly revealed new and disturbing details about Aaliyah's relationship and secret marriage to R. Kelly. Javante Cunningham, a former backup dancer, alleged that she personally witnessed Kelly engaging in sexual activity with Aaliyah on a tour bus. Demetria Smith, a former member of Kelly's entourage, recounted an incident in which Kelly expressed fear that he had impregnated her. Smith further admitted to assisting Aaliyah in falsifying identification documents to claim she was 18. According to his account, the wedding itself was brief, devoid of ceremony, and marked by a somber atmosphere. Neither party dressed formally, and Aaliyah appeared visibly anxious and deeply distressed throughout the proceedings. Reflecting on his role, Smith confessed he is not proud of having facilitated the illegal union. Aaliyah consistently evaded questions regarding R. Kelly after their professional split. In an interview with Christopher John Farley, when asked whether she maintained contact with Kelly or would consider collaborating with him again, she responded with what Farley described as a firm, frosty no to both inquiries. Vibe magazine similarly reported that Aaliyah would deliberately redirect the conversation whenever her marriage to Kelly was mentioned. By 2000, her publicist confirmed that, when R. Kelly is brought up, she doesn't even say his name, and no one is allowed to ask about it at all. Kelly himself later remarked that Aaliyah had multiple opportunities to address their past, but consistently chose not to. In a 2019 interview with Hip Hop Motivation, Damon Dash revealed that Aaliyah rarely spoke about her relationship with R. Kelly, even in private. According to Dash, she made several attempts to address the subject, but could only bring herself to refer to Kelly as a bad man. She confided that the only circumstance under which she might fully discuss the experience would be with a professional counselor. Dash admitted that watching Surviving R. Kelly was deeply unsettling for him, as the interviews featuring visibly traumatized young women struggling to articulate their experiences mirrored the same guarded, pained demeanor Aaliyah displayed whenever she tried to speak about her past with Kelly. This reluctance and the evident emotional strain whenever she broached the subject could suggest more than discomfort. It may point to the gradual resurfacing of repressed or compartmentalized memories. Within the context of trauma-based mind control theories, such behavior is often interpreted as a sign of dissociation breaking down when fragmented identities begin to integrate and long-suppressed memories resurface. If true, this would indicate that Aaliyah may have been in the process of regaining pieces of a fractured past, an unsettling possibility that aligns with the notion that she was attempting to reclaim her autonomy in the years leading up to her death. Following the tumultuous chapter with R. Kelly, Aaliyah withdrew from the public eye for a time before returning with remarkable strength and artistic reinvention. Aligning herself with Timbaland and Missy Elliott, she released One in a Million, a project that not only redefined her sound but cemented her status as a cultural phenomenon. Her influence extended beyond music, transforming her into a fashion icon and a symbol of a new era in R&B. Her career trajectory continued its meteoric rise as she transitioned into film, starring in Romeo Must Die and securing roles in Queen of the Damned, The Matrix sequels, and Honey. By the time of her passing, Aaliyah had completed her third studio album and was reportedly preparing to sever ties with Blackground Records, an ambitious move signaling her intent to take full control of her career. Understand this, when a figure in the entertainment industry is sacrificed, it is never arbitrary. There are always individuals or entire networks who stand to benefit from their removal. These events are not mere accidents. They are carefully orchestrated, strategically approved, and executed by those with the most to gain. These power brokers operate behind the curtain, wielding extraordinary influence. And when an artist threatens to disrupt the narrative, expose uncomfortable truths, or challenge the illusions designed for public consumption, they become a liability. The entertainment industry does not thrive on authenticity. It thrives on illusion, distraction, and fantasy. The opulent lifestyles paraded before the public, luxury cars, designer jewelry, sprawling estates are often just facades. In reality, many celebrities have limited financial autonomy, bound by restrictive contracts and controlled by the very institutions that claim to empower them. Their image is curated to sustain a perception of wealth and success while their true economic freedom remains elusive. This system depends on the audience. Your attention, your engagement, your admiration, these are the currencies that keep the illusion alive. Without them, the facade collapses. That is why, when I say sacrifices are orchestrated, I mean they are calculated moves, meticulously designed by those in the shadows, ensuring that every player in the hierarchy benefits when a rising star is strategically removed. By the late 1990s, Aaliyah appeared to be distancing herself from the figures who once controlled her career, asserting greater independence in both her music and her film choices. At the height of her momentum, she stood on the threshold of unprecedented success, not only as a recording artist but as an actress and a global fashion icon. By 2001, she was breaking established patterns. She had severed ties with R. Kelly, and her relationship with Damon Dash marked a departure from the manufactured, contractual partnerships so common in Hollywood. According to Dash, their bond was authentic, rooted in mutual respect and divine timing, not a calculated arrangement for publicity or influence. This authenticity posed a threat. In an industry built on illusions, real relationships, those not engineered to serve agendas, are rare. Many celebrity unions fail because they are transactional, not organic, and certainly not ordained by God. Aaliyah's relationship with Dash, coupled with her growing autonomy, signaled a shift. She was reportedly seeking greater creative control, and some accounts even suggest she had begun asking difficult questions that challenged the very system sustaining her stardom. And in an industry where compliance ensures survival, curiosity can be fatal. Tupac, Michael Jackson, Prince, Bob Marley, Whitney Houston, Selena, Amy Winehouse, Left Eye, and most recently Angie Stone, just to name a few. Each of them began to speak out before dying suddenly. The system isn't built for questions, it's built for obedience and playing by its rules. Aaliyah, much like Tupac, became a sacrificial figure. In both cases, their deaths cleared a path for others to rise to unprecedented levels of fame. Their absence created a vacuum that the industry swiftly filled. Yes, I'm fully aware that Tupac was initially an actor, a role player within a scripted system. But at some point, he either grew into that role authentically or awakened to the illusion. In either case, he began to command too much influence, evolving from a hired performer into a genuine voice for the people. That shift from controlled asset to independent thinker made him dangerous. When someone operates in truth and refuses to follow the script, their light becomes a threat to the empire of darkness. The system does not tolerate threats, it eliminates them. In contrast, what do we see today? Manufactured personas and artificial stars being elevated? Artists like Megan Thee Stallion, Nicki Minaj, and Cardi B, figures celebrated for messages that thrive on confusion, chaos, and distraction. Their lyrics glorify empty materialism, hypersexuality, fractured relationships, and the relentless pursuit of status. Let's talk about spiritual warfare and destiny theft within the Luciferian and Freemasonry occult traditions. The enemy's agenda has always been clear: to steal, kill, and destroy, especially when it comes to perverting destiny. Aaliyah was given a voice, a calling, a divine assignment, yet the music industry ensnared her in chains disguised as opportunity. From an early age, she was exposed to sexual exploitation, manipulated into silence, and commodified for profit. In occult traditions, sacrifice serves a specific function: to appease spiritual forces, unlock new opportunities, or transfer power from one entity to another. Within Freemasonry and Luciferian systems, sacrificial rituals are foundational. They mimic biblical offerings but invert their intent. Acts performed not in reverence to God but in open defiance of Him. Aaliyah's destiny, her voice, her influence, may well have been hijacked for darker purposes. In the spiritual realm, that is the essence of destiny theft and swap, when a life or a light is extinguished so that others may gain temporary power in exchange. Some believe her death paved the way for Beyoncé's meteoric rise. To be clear, this is not about accusing individuals of direct involvement, but in the context of spiritual warfare, it is undeniable that some benefit when others are removed. These are not personal vendettas, they are strategic maneuvers. Consider the timing. Shortly after Aaliyah's passing, Beyoncé's solo career skyrocketed. Jay-Z ascended to unprecedented influence. Rockefeller Records cemented its dominance. Coincidence? Perhaps, but spiritually, when one star falls and another rises in its place, in occult frameworks, this is known as a destiny swap. More than 2 decades after Aaliyah's passing, questions still linger. This isn't just a story about fame, it's a story about control. And what happens when a woman in the music industry dares to steer her own ship against a system designed to own her? In August 2001, following the completion of filming for the Rock the Boat music video in the Bahamas, Aaliyah boarded a private 10-seat twin-engine Cessna 402B jet. Bound for Opelika, Florida, she was accompanied by 7 crew members. Tragically, less than a minute after takeoff, the aircraft rapidly lost altitude and crashed approximately 200 feet from the runway. 6 passengers, including Aaliyah, died instantly, while 3 others succumbed to their injuries hours later. Aaliyah was only 22 years old. An investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, conducted several years after the crash, revealed multiple alarming irregularities. The plane was significantly overloaded, exceeding its maximum weight limit by several hundred pounds, with uneven weight distribution that would have severely compromised its handling. The pilot, Luis Morales III, lacked certification to operate the aircraft, had a prior drug-related conviction in the United States, and toxicology reports confirmed he was under the influence of cocaine and alcohol at the time of the accident. Given these facts, many have questioned how one of the world's most prominent artists found herself in such a perilous situation. Disputes reportedly arose between Aaliyah's team and the pilot regarding the plane's weight and safety. Yet, despite these objections, the overloaded plane was allowed to take off. Compounding the mystery is Aaliyah's well-documented anxiety about flying. Why would Aaliyah agree to board a small, evidently overloaded aircraft, especially when a chartered plane was scheduled to pick her up the following day? A recent biography, Baby Girl, better known as Aaliyah, raises further troubling questions. According to testimony from Kingsley Russell, a former team baggage handler and eyewitness, Aaliyah initially refused to board the plane. Reportedly, she was administered a sleeping pill by a member of her entourage and carried onto the aircraft while unconscious. Russell, who was 13 at the time and whose family was closely involved with Aaliyah's team, shared that the singer became increasingly agitated upon seeing the small plane and cited a headache as reason to rest. A crew member reportedly administered a pill to Aaliyah under the pretense of treating a headache, which was later revealed to be a sleeping sedative. Despite protests from the team about the plane's excessive weight, the pilot insisted they proceed. According to Russell, after Aaliyah ingested the sedative, she was unaware of being loaded onto the plane while asleep. Questions remain unanswered. Why the sudden decision to leave early? Why switch to a smaller plane? How was the pilot, impaired and uncertified, permitted to fly? How was one of the world's brightest stars left so vulnerable? Rumors circulated that Lenny Kravitz had arranged a separate plane for Aaliyah, but it was allegedly taken instead by director Hype Williams, who is controversially linked to multiple tragic deaths in the industry. Williams was reportedly present with Lisa Left Eye Lopez in Honduras shortly before her untimely passing and was responsible for capturing her final photographs. These unsettling details deepen the suspicion surrounding the crash. The circumstances suggest more than mere accident. They hint at a calculated orchestration. Following Aaliyah's untimely death, a posthumous compilation album was released. However, her original discography mysteriously disappeared from streaming platforms for nearly 2 decades. Her estate asserted that they held no control over this removal, while Blackground Records, established by her uncle, Barry Hankerson, faced serious allegations of exploiting her legacy without proper consent. Given that there is no statute of limitations for sexual assault, Aaliyah could have come forward at any time to hold R. Kelly accountable, potentially as a Jane Doe. This raises troubling questions about financial and industry incentives to suppress her voice. It appears that her uncle's management team may have deliberately silenced her before her passing to minimize legal and reputational risks surrounding R. Kelly, thereby preserving his commercial viability and enabling the label to continue generating lucrative hits for over a decade and a half. Only after R. Kelly's eventual downfall and public cancellation did her uncle pivot to promoting Aaliyah's legacy, aligning it with contemporary movements of female empowerment and cancel culture. This recalibration appears driven less by genuine reckoning and more by calculated efforts to capitalize on her enduring fanbase. Ultimately, this reveals a pattern of exploitation motivated by greed, a deceptive agenda that persists even years after her passing, aiming to appropriate her name and artistry for continued financial gain. While the industry swiftly moved forward, Aaliyah's devoted fans refused to let her legacy fade. They have preserved her memory through art, through storytelling, and through an ongoing quest for truth. Aaliyah was far more than a singer. She was on the cusp of becoming a mogul, poised to claim ownership of her destiny and creative future. Tragically, that opportunity was cruelly denied. One of the eeriest aspects of Aaliyah's final chapter lies in the symbolic foreshadowing present in her work, particularly in the We Need a Resolution and Rock the Boat music videos, her self-titled album, and her role in Queen of the Damned. In the film, she portrayed Akasha, the first and most powerful vampire, a figure of both seduction and destruction. During production, Aaliyah acknowledged uncanny parallels between herself and the character. In an interview, she remarked, "I play Akasha, the original vampire, the queen. I've been working with my coach constantly, putting in extra effort to prepare for this role and really understand her essence so I can do it the right way. I'm a night person, so in a way I already have the part in me. I guess you could say I'm a bit of a vampire for real. I love the dark, I love the night, though I don't take it to the extreme of sleeping in coffins." Shortly after completing the film, tragedy struck. Her plane crashed in a remote swamp-like area where her body was discovered amidst tangled brush and reptiles, a grim reflection of imagery she had recently portrayed in her music video. In We Need a Resolution, Aaliyah appears with dramatic, almost ritualistic makeup, visible bruises and tar on her face and body, and scenes shrouded in serpentine symbolism. One striking shot depicts her levitating motionless in black attire, while another shows her sunglasses with Aaliyah nowhere in the scene, and a plate of her favorite fruits next to flowers, an arrangement reminiscent of a memorial offering. There is even a haunting sequence of her moving toward a glowing tunnel of light. These unsettling visuals, coupled with her own statements about embodying darkness, have led many to question whether these were mere artistic choices or something more ominous, messages encoded in art, foreshadowing a destiny that was never truly her own. Consider the symbolism embedded in the entertainment industry's most prestigious awards. The American Music Award is sculpted in the form of a pyramid, a geometric structure historically associated with ancient civilizations and regarded as a conduit between the earthly and the divine, often interpreted as a house of the gods. The Soul Train Award takes the shape of a Zulu mask, an artifact steeped in spiritual and ritualistic significance within African traditions, symbolizing ancestral power and ceremonial rites. The Grammy Award has long been accompanied by performances and visuals laden with esoteric symbolism. For instance, during the 46th Annual Grammy Awards, an inverted five-pointed star, the pentagram, was prominently displayed on screens. In occult practice, this inverted pentagram is widely recognized as representing the head of Baphomet, an emblem deeply tied to ritual magic and prominently associated with certain strands of Freemasonry. Why is this important? Quick history lesson. Satan and the fallen angels have an insatiable need to be venerated by the public. It's how they siphon energy. Every continent, region, and country has its own gods, but behind the different names and faces are the same entities, the fallen angels. So no matter which deity, Orisha, or god your favorite celebrity, or the industry at large venerates, whether it's Greek, Egyptian, or African in origin, behind the mask is a fallen angel seeking worship. These recurring motifs are not accidental. They reveal a persistent interplay between entertainment, symbolism, and systems of spiritual meaning that transcend mere artistic design. Many dismiss music as harmless entertainment, but insiders tell a different story. There are individuals within the industry who claim to have witnessed unsettling practices behind the scenes. One former employee of Sony and Relativity Records recounted, after an album release, they would host what they called devil parties. These weren't just celebrations, they were rituals. They conjured spirits and openly dedicated the success of the album to Satan. Now, I want to talk about Aaliyah's final self-titled album, A Ritual in Red. Aaliyah's last project, her self-titled album, Aaliyah, 2001, is visually anchored in the color red, a choice that feels deliberate, not coincidental. In occult and esoteric traditions, red has long symbolized blood sacrifice, and transformation. It represents the life force itself, the essence often demanded in ritualistic offerings, and is frequently associated with initiation rites and the ultimate price of autonomy. Astrologically, red is linked to Mars, the planet of war, destruction, and conflict, further reinforcing its connection to endings and violent transitions. The cover is visually striking and drenched in symbolism. The entire background is a saturated red. Her pose is relaxed yet commanding, projecting confidence and sensuality, but her eyes tell a different story. At first glance, her eyes appear open, but upon closer examination, they are not clearly defined, reduced to dark voids. This visual choice creates an unsettling effect, almost as if her gaze has been erased, leaving only shadow where the windows to the soul should be. In symbolic terms, obscured or blackened eyes often signify secrecy, loss of identity, or the concealment of truth. When paired with the dominant red backdrop, the imagery evokes themes of sacrifice and veiled control. Her subtle smile and forward-leaning posture contrast with this darkness, amplifying the sense of duality, power on the surface, erasure beneath. For many theorists, this was not a mere aesthetic decision, but an intentional representation, a silent message encoded in imagery. The color red, the ambiguous eyes, the self-titled name, as if marking both her arrival and her departure, together create a visual requiem. Aaliyah's final music video, Rock the Boat, carries an unsettling weight when viewed through a symbolic lens. A visual ritual? Let's dissect it. It filmed in the Bahamas, surrounded by deep waters often associated with spiritual thresholds, transformation, and, in some traditions, marine spirits linked to seduction and covenant-making. The imagery is striking. Aaliyah is shown floating in the ocean, dressed in black, long associated with mourning and death. She moves gracefully on a yacht surrounded by waves, the rhythmic motion of the boat echoing the oscillation between worlds, life and death, spirit and flesh. The choreography feels sensual yet ritualistic, with slow undulating movements, almost mimicking waves or serpentine energy, both potent symbols in esoteric traditions. Water, in occult and spiritual frameworks, represents portals, a liminal space where boundaries between realms blur. When paired with themes of seduction and surrender, as this video does, it resonates with imagery of offerings and transformation. The question is unavoidable. Was this simply art or a farewell coded in symbols? Days later, Aaliyah would perish in a tragic crash, never returning from the very waters where she filmed her last video. I'd like to revisit the topic of Akasha. Aaliyah's final film role was as Akasha in Queen of the Damned, the primordial vampire queen, a figure of ancient seduction and destruction. In interviews, Aaliyah herself remarked, "I play Akasha, and that's me." Admitting that, she resonated with the character's essence and her affinity for darkness and the night. In retrospect, those words feel almost prophetic. In the film, Akasha is no ordinary antagonist. She is a divine predator who rises from the dead to enslave humanity, feeding on life force, performing blood-soaked rituals, and scorning God's creation. Her reign of terror ends in a dramatic, ritualistic death, burned alive in sacrificial flames. Months later, Aaliyah would perish in a catastrophic plane crash, her body consumed by fire. The parallels are chilling. Was this mere coincidence, or an instance of predictive programming, art foreshadowing reality? For many theorists, Queen of the Damned was more than a movie. It was a ritualistic farewell encoded in symbolism. Aaliyah as Akasha, the immortal queen who dies by fire, mirroring her own tragic end. Ultimately, her reign ends when another vampire drains her completely, assuming her power and her throne. In other words, the queen dies so that a successor can rise. This narrative, Akasha's ritual death and the transfer of her crown, resonates disturbingly with what followed in reality. Aaliyah's untimely death created a vacuum at the pinnacle of the industry, a space quickly filled by another. The numbers and ritual symbolism. I want to provide as much information as possible. As followers of Christ, we know that God is firmly against all forms of New Age practices, astrology, numerology, tarot, etc. However, in order to expose and explain certain spiritual topics, it sometimes becomes necessary to understand and reference the language of the enemy. One example is gematria, a system that has been used in occult rituals and symbolic sacrifices since ancient times. It is still widely employed today, especially in celebrity sacrifices and major world events, often revealing coded patterns and messages that align with dark spiritual agendas. For those who examine symbolism, the parallels are difficult to dismiss. Even gematria enthusiasts note numerical correspondences between Queen of the Damned and blood sacrifice, suggesting intentional design. Whether coincidence or coded message, the imagery is chilling. Aaliyah's final role was not just a character, it was a foreshadowing of her fate. Gematria, the ancient practice of assigning numerical values to letters and words, has long been used in occult traditions as a hidden language to encode meaning. In ritual theory, numbers are not arbitrary. They are symbolic, carrying spiritual weight and intent. Aaliyah's death, when viewed through this lens, reveals chilling patterns. She died on August 25, 2001, exactly 39 days before September 11th, a number that carries esoteric significance. In occult numerology, 3 and 9 symbolize duality, incompletion, often linked to transitional phases or endings. Some researchers believe her death was part of a series of ritual sacrifices leading up to the September 11th attacks, an event many theorists also claim was steeped in occult symbolism. Here's where things get really strange. In gematria, the phrase rock the boat equals 118 in reverse ordinal. Now guess what? The word death also equals 118. The crash itself also seems coded. Plane crash equals 44 in reduction. The number 44 is heavily associated with death in occult numerology. It's why you often see it connected to celebrity passings. Queen of the Damned equals 193 in simple English gematria, the same value as the word sacrificed. Blood sacrifice equals 121, which also matches the value of the word ritual. Are these coincidences? Or is this part of the coded language used in high-level occult rituals? For those who study symbolism, this isn't random, it's intentional. Her last performance wasn't on stage. It was a ritual, played out in plain sight, encoded in art, numbers, and timing. Aaliyah's death didn't just mark the end of an era, it cleared a path. Her absence created space for a new figure to rise. This was not a tragic accident, it was a calculated silencing. A blueprint erased, a pawn deliberately removed from the board so others could ascend. The theory suggests the industry always requires a princess, a chosen figure of beauty, talent, and influence to uphold its image and push its agendas. Aaliyah embodied that role until she began to step outside the boundaries of control. When she broke formation, the system prepared a replacement. Beyoncé's meteoric rise immediately following Aaliyah's passing was not coincidence. Her image carried traces of Aaliyah's allure, but with a deeper allegiance to the industry's machine. In these power structures, success is rarely about talent alone. It is about allegiance and unwavering loyalty to the agenda. Aaliyah's name translates to the highest, the most exalted one. They attempted to bury her legacy beneath tragedy and manufactured narratives, but truth has a way of resurfacing. If her death was indeed part of a ritual, then her story becomes a form of resurrection, a truth reclaiming its voice. We refuse silence. Here, we unveil what others conceal. We decode the symbols. We speak the names they tried to erase. The entertainment industry operates in patterns. Sudden suspicious deaths, concealed scandals, occult imagery, strategic replacements, and a chilling quiet that follows. Because when you study the patterns, the symbols, and the silences, they begin to tell the story the headlines never will. This isn't just Aaliyah's story, it's a reflection of how Hollywood truly operates, a system that elevates talent only to consume it once it no longer serves the machine. The patterns are undeniable: grooming, exploitation, rebellion, enforced silence, and then sudden tragic death. And through it all, the system thrives because no one dares to speak. Aaliyah was adored. she was exceptional, but she was also ensnared. Whether you believe in MK Ultra, occult sacrifice, or elite power structures, her story demands scrutiny, because when silence serves the powerful, death becomes the most convenient solution. Her narrative belongs to a larger, darker blueprint, a framework of control, programming, and the ultimate cost of fame within an industry that devours its own. Let Aaliyah's legacy stand as a warning. Not every star shines in freedom, some are illuminated only to be extinguished. If this video opened your eyes, I encourage you to surrender your gifts back to God. Invite Him to sanctify your platform, your voice, and your purpose, because what is ordained by heaven cannot be stolen by darkness. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to see what truly happens behind the curtain. And don't forget to like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more truth and spiritual insight. I'll see you in the next one.